Yeah, I realized early on, and the story now, that our mandate is to help our agencies grow. That's it. Simple as that. We want them to thrive, and that's what we started out at the very beginning with Jim.
Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. We are proudly presented by SPI Logistics, and I am your host, Blythe Milligan. And in this episode, we've got a special guest for you today, and that is the founder and CEO, Mitch Helten of SPI Logistics. And we're going to be talking about those good and those challenging times of the entrepreneurial journey, especially in the world of freight. And so, Mitch, I'm finally pumped to have you on the show because it's been a long time coming.
I'm happy to be here. This is great.
Now, we were talking a little bit before we started recording, and I had mentioned that I was listening to your interview with Chris Jolly. You guys had talked about a year ago, and I love the story that you gave when you said that you first started SPI. Your business partner kept telling you to leave him alone, and that was how you came up with the initial idea of starting the freight agent program. I want to say, was that probably the light bulb moment for you to start up the freight agency for SPI?
It kind of just happened upon us because you're referring to Jim Taggart. He was a very good friend of mine, and unfortunately passed away last
Mm,
year in October.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But as far as the freight brokerage was concerned, we were co-founders in that because I went, I had I'd kind of restarted the business from when we first were doing importing product from 1979 to 82, 83. And then I was in the airlines, and I did almost 5 years with my uncle in a travel agency. And we were doing business travel. So my friend Jim, that was the end of May, beginning of June of 1990, came and I met him on the weekend at a barbecue, and he called me up on Monday morning, the following Monday, and said, "Hey, I'm coming over for coffee." So I said, "Okay," and he was interested in what I was talking over the weekend. And the trucking company he was working for didn't look like it was going to do too well. It was a flatbed heavy haul carrier here in the West Coast, and so he was one of the sales, or he was the sales manager for the company, and so he kind of saw the writing on the wall, and they were going to let him go, and they gave him a severance. So he said, "How would you like a partner?" I said, "Well, okay. This is what I'm working on. More import, of goods." And he says, "Yeah, that's good with me." And so he started working with me. And then he got a call from one of his clients, who's an international freight forwarder uh, in Canada, and they had a pulp mill that they were disassembling for a company in the province of Quebec, and it had to go on hundreds of truckloads to the port of Miami, and then it was catching a ship to go to Brazil, and they were going to reassemble it there. So I said, "Well, that's great, Jim. Where's the reservation system for the trucks?" And he said, "There is there." He just laughed at me because there is no such thing. So I got to work in the background, and I found out, during that year that if you're your own freight broker and you're booking freight, you're getting the freight, you're getting that relationship with the shipper, you're going out and finding the carrier or calling them up back then, and you're, you know, finding which carrier can move it between the 2 points that you have to move it. Um, if you're doing all that, eventually you're starting to get enough business that you got to do the invoicing, you got to make sure the cash flow's right, you got to get the financing in place, you have to do the payments to the carriers. Then if there's issues that come up, or you got to deal with the carriers, so there's like I found out 70% of our time was spent on the administrative side, the back office. So, and he just wanted to keep working, getting the freight and booking it. And that was what he loved to do. So I thought, well, we tried getting more people to do that in the office, um, and didn't work out. We hired a couple of people, didn't work out. So then we hired a guy, but on straight commission, that knew freight, kind of like Jim, and he started to work out. So I thought, I want more guys like Jim. And I'll set all this up in the background. So we put together a model and a plan to do that. I built a database. We built our own reservation system basically, and set out the carrier contracts from it, and it followed everything through. And in the beginning, I thought, how hard can it be? Pick up at A, drop off at B. Well, there's a whole bunch of things between A and B that happen. And so I built this system with off-the-shelf software. And then I thought, we could do this for other freight brokers like Jim. And so came up with a way of connecting people well before the internet was available. And back then, if you wanted a LAN, a connection, direct data connection between two offices across the country or across the town or whatever, those were costing about $100,000 for a line. So I came up with getting, again, off-the-shelf software where if you want to be an agent with SPI, you had to have a computer, you had to have a phone line, maybe two for calls. You need to have a fax line, and you need to have a computer line, data line. Or actually, you didn't need that. You needed the three lines, but one of the phone lines, the fax and the was used for also the computer. So we'd get them to get a fax modem on their computer. And I used a program called PC Anywhere, and I set up computers inside our office, and they would just dial in and remotely control the computer in our office. So that worked through till the late 1990s. And yeah, in a way, you're right. That's how it started. I just thought, let's leave Jim alone, let him do his thing, and as much of his time as possible to do it. And that worked.
It sounds like with your business travel agency that a lot of those skills that you learned there kind of apply to freight. Am I off base in that thinking?
No, that's true. A lot of the things, and I found this as in business and as an entrepreneur, when you're creating something new, because that's often what ends up happening. You're creating a new model or a new system or a new way of doing things, uh, and those are the things that are most successful. Especially when you're doing something that's a need. People need this. There's a problem, and they're always coming up against it. If you can solve for that, um, you know, you're on the right track. And so, yes, my experiences in the airlines, I worked in when I just got out of high school, I worked in the aircraft maintenance side of things, but in the parts department, stores, they called it. So if an aircraft was down, I had to arrange to get the part in if I was on the night shift, and even hire a Learjet or something to get the part over to where it needed to go. And then, so I learned a little bit about inventory, warehousing, receivables, shipping,
That's
and
exactly where I was
yeah,
gonna go after after you mentioned that. I was
right.
like, "Oh, wow, so you really know that side of it too."
So I learned a little bit about that, and a lot of customs, paperwork and that sort of thing. And then I worked in the airlines also as a baggage handler for a short while. And then I quit all of that, and my uncle was opening up a travel agency, and he's the guy that, we had a reservation system. I went down to Dallas and learned the Sabre reservation system down there, and he's the guy that taught me how to sell, because we were doing cold calls, and we were doing business travels. So we'd go and see, we call them up, and we had our spiel. We had to make sure it fit on the back of a business card. Couldn't be talking too much. You had to listen. So we'd just call for appointments, and we'd go see the people, and we'd say we can book, we can do this. We had all these things we could do for them to make it much easier to book their travel. And we ended up doing $1 million the first year we opened the travel agency in sales, which was pretty good for a travel agency that back then. And the city we were in had 26 other travel agencies as well. So that was a pretty good thing that we did. And the commissions were shrinking back then. The airlines were cutting back commissions percentages. So I stayed with that till I thought, I'm going to get back into running my own business. So that's where, we got back into the freight brokerage at that point.
And so you probably noticed the commission splits dwindling in this industry. It forced you to change careers. And that was probably one of the, I guess, maybe the lessons that you learned of keeping valuable employees or keeping valuable agents on your staff by not
Mm-hmm.
dwindling their commission
Well,
structure.
no, in fact, we've increased it over the years. We started out, I thought the fair way to go, at first I thought, and this was totally in a vacuum. This is all came up in my head.
Yeah, because freight agents didn't
And
exist until, you were really
no,
one of the first people to create it.
well, there was American Backhaulers was, but it was more an employee model, and they were all in one, big bullpen, right? But as far as a networking with agents, connecting on computer and using a system like that, I think we were one of the first,
Wow.
if not the first, to do that.
And so you mentioned with the agent model that working with Jim was one of those sort of catalysts that said you wanted to get more employees like that, or more, contractors that worked like that. What were some of those early days of it? Did you use your cold calling expertise to start recruiting some of those first agents for SPI?
Yes, and believe it or not, advertising in newspapers.
Oh, wow, interesting.
Yeah,
Tell
so
me
the
more
first
about that.
agents, well, so there's outbound, that's the cold calls, but we also tried some inbound marketing, and so you know, I'd get people contact us. There was no email back then, so you get a phone call, and so I was the person that was recruiter as well. So I pretty well did all the jobs in SPI over the years as we rated them. And
And
our first guy that called up was a fellow in Portland, Oregon, actually. Jim Parker was his name, and he was moving big telephone cable reels all around. And he joined us. I did a business plan and projections for 1992 to 96, and I grew us from, I showed growing us from, I think we were doing around 1 million by that point, the end of 91. That year, I had us growing from that to 7.8 million. And by the end of 96, we actually did 7.7. And on the profit side, uh, I was 100,000 off on the overall, gross sales, and I was 100,000 more on our profit. So I like to be conservative in our costs and things, right? Really over. So that was pretty good to have a projection that worked out that close, 4-year projection. And so Jim joined us, and that was the first guy. And then we had others join us, and I think by 96 we had 8 or 9 agents working with us, all working from either their home. Pretty well, most of them were working from home at that point.
Are you in freight sales with a book of business looking for a new home? Or perhaps you're a freight agent in need of a better partnership? These are the kinds of conversations we're exploring in our podcast interview series called The Freight Agent Trenches, sponsored by SPI Logistics. Now, I can tell you all day that SPI is one of the most successful logistics firms in North America who helps their agents with back office operations such as admin, finance, IT, and sales, but I would much rather you hear it directly from SPI's freight agents themselves. And what better way to do that than by listening to the experienced freight agents tell their stories behind the how and the why they joined SPI. Hit the freight agent link in our show notes to listen to these conversations, or if you're ready to make the jump, visit spi3pl.com. So very early on in the agent model, one of the first to do it, very early on with working from home, very early on with your own sort of, custom built TMS system and processes. I'm curious as to what were some of those early challenges that you knew you had to address as you started to scale up?
Well, remembering the difference between profit and cash.
Hmm.
So we would, the shippers, the customers would pay, and you want to keep the receivables nice and tight. But sometimes, especially at certain times of the year, like going into January, they slow down. But your carriers want to be paid, and to keep your carriers with you, you want to pay them fast. So today we pay a carrier as soon as they're delivered, they can get paid if they want to. So back then we were doing the same thing. So I found that we had to get some financing in place so that we could, as we grew, we could maintain our payments to the carriers as long as the receivables were there to support it and coming in. And then you have to watch your costs. Now, the nice thing about freight brokerage operation, especially the agencies and that is, it's quite scalable. So any freight broker needs to keep their hard costs to a minimum. And so, uh, in fact, that's one of the reasons why we've leased offices instead of purchased them. And because you can scale up and down. So we've been through a number of downturns. 2008 was a big one. At that point, we were doing about 60 million in that year. Going into 2008, by 2009, 6 months later, we had gone down to about 38 million.
Oh, wow.
And there was a little bit of slow growth from 2001 to 2004. We'd made it by 2000. We were around 25 million in sales, and we had by that point probably 13 or 14 agents working with us. And we had developed a new software system in 97. I could see the writing on the wall. They were talking about Y2K. I don't remember hearing about that.
Yes.
There were a lot of software database systems that were going to die because the date was going to go back to 1900. So we had to rebuild. So the system, I hired a software company under our design and my instructions to develop a new system. And we launched that in December 1st in 1999, a month before Y2K.
Whew, I bet you were sweating.
Well, we had to do it. I had all the operations side of things working. We could book the freight. We could handle all of that. And we kept all our agents going, but we still hadn't finished the accounting batch. So we started with that, and we quickly got that going into January. So that system, I took that and I thought, this really works well. We had a meeting By that point, there were three of us that were this, and we had a meeting, and the one guy wanted to say we're spending too much money. We got why the .com crash was starting. We got to drop. We had an on in-house developer. He said we got to drop, cut costs. So we got to stop working on the software, and we got what we need. I said to him, software's never done.
Ain't that the
So
truth?
what if I find another project to help pay for our developers? So what I did is I went out to a friend who had a trucking operation, and they paid their carriers by a commission on what how they that's how they got paid instead of by the mile. And I said to the manager there, who was a friend of mine, hey, I gave you a system back in 1994. Would you like a new system? And she said, sure. So they looked at it, and I managed to get some money to pay to cut the costs in half on the developer. And then I took that idea and I started a company called Tailwind Transportation Software from that. And that was 2002. And we sold that in, it was a client server based system where you had the company, and we built it for carriers um, to start with, and then carriers and brokers. But it was a system that was client server based. So you had to install your own server in your office and worked within your network. But it would also work remotely just with the internet. So because that was the system all our agents were using, we switched over to that, and uh, that worked quite well. And we grew that. We converted it to a software as a service in 2015. So those first number of years, what's that? 2014, 2015. Those first uh, 12 or so years, we brought on about 460 trucking companies and freight brokerage
Oh, wow.
companies using the system. And then when we sold it, we had converted it from 2014 to 2015. We converted it to a software as a service. It's all web-based and successfully did it. It was very difficult for all the other TMS systems at the time to go from their legacy client server
It still is.
web-based, and it still is for many of them. But we managed to do it. It wasn't our first try; it was our fourth try because it was trying to do that since 2006. I could see that
Wow.
that would be an opportunity. Um, but we did it, and with inbound marketing alone, we managed to by 2020 when we sold it to um, Onvasi Technologies, who was 2 years later, 2.5 years later, bought by WiseTech, which is a big tech company that has freight forwarder software and now all kinds of software under their belt. So Tailwind is now part of WiseTech. And when we sold it in 2020, we had over 700 companies come on to the web-based system. So in that short period of time, that was the we bought almost double the companies in that time frame. So it was a good
So yeah, I mean, I'm listening to all of the you were really so early on in a lot of these different technological advances that are
move.
commonplace to today. Does it sort of blow your mind to see how far logistics has come as far as technology adoption?
Yeah, there's a lot more coming. Um,
Really?
I think with AI, there's new things we've adapted to. Building software has changed a lot from the old ways you did it, writing code. Today at SPI, we were on Tailwind. SPI was on Tailwind up till 2018,
Oh, wow.
and we switched over to Revanova because
Wow.
we could manage and configure more of it. We had outgrown Tailwind. Tailwind was good for middle and medium-sized companies. But by that point, we had outgrown Tailwind. We've got a really good team, a management team, executive team. Well, everybody at Tailwind's great. We have really good support. So that we've developed that. We invested in that. I uh, I was working a lot with Tailwind through the years from 2004 actually through till 2020 really. So I had hired Joe Chandler to join us back in 2015, and he did an excellent job putting, taking the people that were good to keep and adding more people to the team. So we invested in that. We invested in technology, and that was one of the switchovers to Revenova. Now it can't do everything for us. So today, instead of building a software or TMS where it has to do everything and do all the integrations, today we done something different. We've built an internal data warehouse. It's got its own API, and we take the best of breed of any of the systems that we want, like TriumphPay for paying carriers, Revenova for the basic TMS. We have an LTL system we work with. We got different tracking systems we work with for shipment tracking, and there's you're probably aware of all the different things available to freight brokerage companies out there, but we've got at least 25 different systems that are all connected through our central data warehouse, and we've built the tools to be able to connect these different systems together. If they don't talk to each other, we make them talk to each other. But we get all the data running through our central system. And we've got it so fine-tuned to the point where with our internal dev team, where an integration with the complexity where it took maybe 3 months to do 3 years ago, AI, we could do it in a week. So that allows SPI to provide exactly what the freight broker needs, the agent needs. So if it doesn't matter what mode of transport they're used to doing, or what kind of customers they have, what kind of freight they're moving, what the system that's best designed for that, we can provide it to them.
Brokering success demands a battle-ready strategy. TIE TMS equips freight brokers with the ultimate battle station for conquering a tough market. With TIE, brokers gain access to a comprehensive platform where rate intelligence and quote history converge on a single screen. It's not just a page, it's a strategic command center designed to help brokers win. TIE equips your team with all of the data they need to negotiate with confidence and allows them to communicate directly with carriers and customers from a simple control base. Revolutionize the way your brokers perform by giving them a competitive advantage with TIE TMS. For more info, go to tai-software.com/battle stations, and we also have a link for you in the show notes to sign up for a demo. And that's one of because we've done interviews with a lot of the SPI executive team and a lot of the freight agents, and one of the most popular episodes we've ever done is with as a Peralta who works in IT for SPI, and he was talking about how that central database is so important because there could be freight agents that want to use Revenova as a TMS or want to use another preference for maybe their CRM or some other different technology stack, but they're able to almost plug and play into SPI's system where the onboarding is really quick and they can stay on the programs that they're familiar with, or they have the option to upgrade to a tool like Revenova or maybe some of these other systems that you guys have with SPI that they have been wanting, that these freight agents have been wanting to try. And so I think that that's such a unique approach that I'm not sure that other freight agencies are tackling. And I think that it sort of speaks to how the company was originally formed. You guys have always been, kind of establishing what the baseline looks like, but then moving the goalposts to where it's, even better and even better. And so I'm curious as to, with, over 40 years that SPI has been in business, all of the advancements that you guys have taken, how have you avoided some of the more common entrepreneurial pitfalls of, the paralysis by analysis or decision fatigue of which way to go? Were there any times that you weren't sure about which direction to take?
I mean, of course, that's happened,
Mm,
but you meet the challenges as they come along, and business is really about not really seeing things as problems, but more as challenges,
mm.
because there's always a solution. So, and I've always been that kind of a person who's looking for the solution. So when I see problem, instead of getting focused on the problem, to evaluate what the problem is exactly, but really with the facts. Um, if you look at it, you analyze it, if you can come up with a plan around it or to solve it, then everything's okay.
It's not a problem
It can
anymore.
work. It's not a problem anymore. It's just a challenge, and now you've learned something, and it helps to solve other problems.
Do you think I don't want to say the challenges that freight agents face today are drastically different from, 10 years ago? Or do you think it's kind of about the same? It's all solving problems.
It is solving problems. They're solving problems for their clients, the shippers they work for. They're solving problems even when they're working and partnering up with, a carrier partner who's trying to serve uh, the broker, get the thing done, and they're working together. So they're solving problems, every hour, every day of the week. As far as the business side of things for freight brokerage companies, yeah, I think it is a little more challenging today. Because there's a lot more coming at us. There's all this new shiny tech coming out. AI is the thing, and there's AI that helps you with your emails, and AI that helps you with your phone calls. But which one? It kind of reminds me of the .com era where there was all this new software coming out, and it was the greatest, latest, best thing, and new shiny object to look at. So there's those are challenges. Just making the right choice. And I think my experience with building or designing, I'm not a coder. I know how to code software, but I just know how it's supposed to work. I'm good with systems and processes and that sort of thing. And I could tell you know when there was a problem where it was a people problem, you know, or this is not really they're frustrated and they're at each other's throats, but this is really a system problem we got to solve here. So, but for freight brokers today, compared to 10 years ago, there's more choice. There's more to choose from. There are tons of TMS systems on the market now that weren't there before. Many of them, you know, young new systems. So they've got to mature because there's so much more to designing a software TMS system. There's so many different things that go on and you have to account for. And we were lucky enough to have that when we started Tailwind from the experience of SPI. So we were able to make an interface that was straightforward, simple, not too many clicks, not too many pages, and all of that, and get your job done fast. Um, the challenges today are that the costs of, for example, load boards has escalated exponentially, especially in the last 5 or 6 years. And I just see some of the bigger load boards not keeping up with technology because technology today isn't the legacy stuff that you had. It's now getting all these little apps and programs working together, and the whole um, industry is changing. Connection, the communication is changing. You're now having direct connections with the driver and connect. The visibility on where they are, and being able to post out what loads or freight you have available is changing. So it's and being able to see what's coming and seeing how that will apply around the corner is very difficult. So I think today for a standalone freight brokerage, it's a difficult thing because your technology costs have escalated. Getting the right system, like you can spend a ton on the technology, but if you got the wrong system for your business, it doesn't help. It creates big problems.
How do you know if you've chosen the right technology partner or even just business partner? Because I'm of the opinion that, and this is slightly related, but I'm of the opinion that becoming a freight agent is one of the best pathways for entrepreneurial growth in all of logistics. But is it right for everyone, considering the technological investment that you have to make, considering, maybe the brokerage that you have to work for to build up your book of business? How important are all of these things? And is it ever the wrong decision to become a freight agent, or maybe what makes it the right decision for someone to become a freight agent?
Well, all I can do is look at the past experience
Mm,
and statistics. Uh, Compared to standalone freight brokers um, that we saw from the data from TIA, freight brokers that do 16 million and under, which is the vast majority of them
mm,
out there as standalone freight brokers, compared to SPI agencies, our agencies do 40 to 50% better in sales and profit than the standalones. And I think there's some good reasons for that. We work with best practices. We're continuously improving. We're investing the big bucks into technology.
mm.
And of course, we're going to also get the most efficiency out of it. So we're going to, we've got that experience to pick the right things and apply the best for our agents. Uh, and remember that thing about spending 70 or 80% of your time if you're standalone, is administrative, the back office, then what's that costing you versus getting 30% or you're 70%, right? SPI at 30%. As far as if your margins are there and everything, that's what you're going to get. And we do go up to 75% if their margins are good and strong and the volume's there. So for that, we've seen a lot of we've actually had offices that have converted from their standalone uh, freight brokerage company to becoming an agency attached to the SPI Logistics network, and they've thrived. I'm very proud to say many of our agents' offices, the even the standalone one-person offices, uh, earn more money than I do a year.
That's awesome. You don't really hear that a lot in
No, you
just
don't.
business in general.
It's just, well, I'm proud to say that. I like to say that.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, because for a lot of entrepreneurs, and I can speak this from my own business, sometimes just having the help is such a mental release that it allows you to be able to focus or have the energy and the bandwidth to focus on the things that you're really good at, communicating with
Right,
your customers, talking to
right,
them, building those relationships. You can't really scale that. but you could probably scale, some transcription services or, email overload and things like that. Is
Right.
that maybe a safe assumption that, well, not a safe assumption. I think it's a fact that you guys are, providing this level of help to folks who started off, wanting to do everything themselves, but then started to realize there is power in delegation.
Yes, and it's the services that we do for them, but we also provide the best of technology. We also try to provide the best service. But, half of the staff we have here at the head office is just for supporting agents. So we're available to help them. And then there's the financial support. In other words, we're handling cash. The agencies get paid weekly, and they get paid after the job is done. As soon as the thing is delivered, it's counted. So the very next week they get money, they get paid for that. So there's the cash flow thing. There's the risk. How many clients? If you're a standalone agency, you got to do the credit on your customers. And I learned back early on, um, credit risk on your customers is the thing that will kill you if you don't manage your. So we do all the checks up front. We take care of the credit approvals for all the agency offices, and that protects them. That reduces their risk. And we take care of the carriers, paying the carriers. We deal with claims. You have a claim come up, or you have something that happens as an agent. If you have something that happens that you have never dealt with before, we've dealt with it. We've got over 60,000 carriers as a resource in our database that we work with at one time or another. These are not just carriers, we brought them on because they work for us. And so also in help in dealing with situations with carriers and all of that to make sure that they can service their clients, the shipper clients, uh, the best. And they do because it's their own business. They're not going to hesitate to pick up a call from their client on Saturday night at midnight because there's a problem. And you're not going to necessarily get that with a lot of employee-based logistics companies.
Yeah, the agents genuinely care about
Mhm.
their relationships with their customers because they know it's very much you can't eat if you don't kill, and not to say you're going to kill your customers or anything, but it's one of
Right.
those things where if you lose a
I,
customer, especially as an agent, that could make or break you.
yeah. Well, kill the problem.
Yeah. Solve the problem. That I think that's
Solve
been
the problem. Yeah.
a resounding, sort of lesson throughout this. And when I was reading through our pre-show document, you had mentioned the importance of goal setting, and I'm curious as to what are the differences in goals if you are sort of a newer agent versus a more established agent. Are the goals kind of the same or are they different?
They change over time, but it's really, really important for you to start with a vision of what you want to do, and then set a goal for what it looks like, and by when. Now, people think, oh, I got to reach that goal by that date. But the most important thing about a goal is it sets action, sets motion, your actions and a path, direction. So quite honestly, if you're shooting for the stars, you're probably going to get to the moon, right? So if you set a goal, you're actually going to start stepping forward. And if you mentioned analysis paralysis. If you're just sitting there, okay, now how do I get there, and you figure out the strategy, and you spend all your time figuring out strategy, you're frozen. You're not moving. So that's in the beginning. That's the biggest thing, is to set a goal. So if your goal is, if you don't like where you're at right now, then set a goal to what will make a difference. At least it gets you moving and the action. So for, I've seen over the years for a independent one person freight brokerage, they've got to set those targets and their goals, and they're going to be at a certain level. At a certain point, you hit a ceiling, and we can help increase the height of that ceiling with the services and support we give. Best practices and how to sell, and best practices on operations and technology, and the new system, the new things that are coming out, and managing your clients as far as the cash and all of that. But then there's the we can provide some support in maybe your operations a little bit to help you get to the next level, or finding the right person to come in, and maybe they're doing the the delivery and those types of follow-ups with the carrier. Uh, then there's the next level, whereas you're actually hiring people and you're growing, and that's probably going to go to 3 to 4 people with you. You start with one and maybe 2 or 3 more, and you get to another level. And then your goals start changing about, I can get this big customer, and I need staff to do it. Then you get into being an office that's doing 10, 20, 30 million a year. And you've got a team with you inside your office. And they're all operations people, or a sales rep, some operations people. And so it allows you to dream
Hmm.
when you can see a path to getting to that first goal, and the next one and the next one. And it allows you to visualize bigger things.
And I think too it leads to failing faster because there's no greater lesson than when you lose money. And when you
Yeah,
lose money, you get better. And I
yeah,
think when you're setting goals, that sometimes, you have to see the forest for the trees. And just because, a couple of those trees didn't work out and aren't still
right.
living doesn't mean that the rest of the forest is bad. And so I
That's
think
right.
as if I'm reading between the lines of what you're saying is set the goals, set the action plan to get there. And your goals might be different than somebody who's been doing this for 15 years, but it doesn't mean it's not worth doing, putting in the effort and putting in the work.
It's just as important. Yeah, it's just as valuable too. And it's there after that. What you thought in your head, software's like that. Oh, we can build this in 6 months. No, you can't. But your brain
Oh,
says you can.
I'm currently going through that right
Yeah,
now with the project I thought
yeah,
was going to launch in August, and here we are.
yeah. So exactly. And I'm doing that in another business where I thought we'd have up and running last March, and we're just doing it this one. So, but yeah, it's trial and error. It's just the important thing is the action, is making those steps forward, and heading down a path. Maybe you're going to hit a tree. You'll figure out a way around it.
Yes. Maybe not, maybe don't focus on that forest for the trees. maybe
Yeah, yeah,
maybe go around
exactly.
that forest
Yeah,
if you're
yeah,
skiing.
exactly.
All
Yeah.
right, now, Mitch, we've talked a lot about sort of the evolution of freight brokerage, freight agents, the technology that supports them both. I'm curious as to what sort of the market looks like in your eyes as we, head into 2025, head into the new year. There, it feels like there's much more optimism in the industry. Are you kind of feeling that and seeing that as well?
Yeah, I would have hoped, like I saw everything that happened through 21, 22, and things peaked, and then 23, um, everybody had jumped into the marketplace, and then they were failing, and that really brought freight rates down. And I would have thought they would have come back. Many of us did, would have thought that. they would have come back maybe this year, 2024. They did a little, but not to the extent that we thought. But I think though we're probably finally going to see some more uh, improvement in 2025. I think 2025 is going to be a pretty good year and lots of opportunities. The marketplace is changing. I think you're going to see um, maybe a little more consolidation in logistics companies in the marketplace. Uh, as far as independent freight brokerages, I think there's big opportunities for them to maybe join a network. And if they're considering a network, I'd really look them to check out SPI. Uh, but we've proven that they do much better. And they're still independent. It's still their business. They're just part of a network, and they've got all of the. They don't have to focus on what kind of software to get or all of this stuff. We're gonna make sure that they get the best of what's out there and the service as well.
Especially because, with one of the past things that Anita, who is SPI, she's in charge of HR and more of like the people relationships within the company, and she mentioned on that episode about how SPI doesn't have to compete as far as, or they don't have the agent saturation that maybe some other agent programs might have,
It's
and I
true.
think that
That's
is
true.
one of those very important things as you're thinking about, how are you going to grow in 2025? And I think that's something really strong to consider is if you are
Right.
partnering with a company, are they going to be able to grow with you? Because I think you also said, I had in my notes that you said in the interview with Chris Jolly that you have to be careful who your partners are. And so I
Right.
think that you have laid out, all of the really good reasons of why, SPI is a great partner to work with, especially, within the freight industry, and hearing about all of the things that you guys invested in early on or very new to the game, and
Right.
all of these different
Well,
aspects.
yeah, I realized early on, and the story now, that our mandate is to help our agencies grow. That's it. Simple as that. We want them to thrive. And that's what we started out at the very beginning with Jim.
And that is, I feel like that is the sound clip that I want to start off the show with. That's going to be a sound bite that we clip in and throw it up on social media, because it has the ethos has remained true throughout the 40 plus years that SBI has been in business. Now, Mitch, as we sort of round out this conversation, is there anything that you think is important to mention that we haven't already talked about?
Well, I think we've talked a lot about a lot of different things. You brought up things from the past, from other interviews as well. Um, well, we're continuing to grow. We're looking at ways we can help independent freight brokerage companies also join the network. And if they're interested, they can contact us. Um, but I think it's good for the whole industry. The more that you know, independent people are involved running the being that go-to person for freight brokerage in the industry. They provide a very important role. I mean, when I started, I think freight brokers made up less than 2% of the
Oh, wow.
marketplace. And today I think it's getting close to 30, or maybe more. I don't know. But freight broker is going to focus 100% on their client, the shipper. And no matter what kind of freight they're moving or whatever they have, whereas a carrier the carriers focus, even though they say it's on their customer. The truth is it's on that truck, and where's that truck, and where can I get freight to put on that truck? Because they got to keep it moving full as much as possible. So I think it's good for the whole industry, and there's got to be integrity there and fairness in the marketplace.
I think that that is a perfect place to end this conversation because I'm going to throw up a bunch of links in the show notes to where folks can listen to your conversation with Chris Jolly, where they can listen to, our previous conversations with Eze, as I mentioned earlier, and then also to connect with you and SPI if they're interested in growing their agency or even starting out to become an agent in 2025. Can't speak enough good things about SPI and working with you guys and the support that you provide me as just a podcaster, working out in Florida versus what you guys are all doing, sort of north of us and in the United States as well. So I appreciate you, the audience appreciates you, and thank you so much for your time.
Okay, well, thank you, Blythe. Much appreciated.
Absolutely.
Thank you.